So I've heard this on TikTok like a bunch of times. A bunch of different people asking if God exists, why does God allow negative things to happen in the world? And I think we're looking at this wrong because I don't. Now this is just my opinion, but I think that's part of the thing. Like if life is a giant game, there's an objective to the game. And I think one of the main objectives is to become a consciously aware species. Like for the human species to become conscious. But because we're not conscious, we most people are unconscious, which is why we have these unconscious problems in the world. We have all these problems in the world because we're not conscious of them. We just look at the problems like, oh, that's a problem, that's a problem. I wish God, why does God allow all these problems? And it's like, why are you blaming God for the human species fucked up behavior? Like, it's not God's fault. God created the universe itself. So then what? We expect God to do everything for us? That's the biggest problem, is that if we have problems, we then blame God for those problems, or we blame God for not fixing those problems. When it's not up to God to fix those problems, it's up to us. That's the whole point of us being here. Why do you think we have time? We're on a planet where we're human beings that are on a rock in space, and we are beings. But we are not consciously, spiritually awake, woke fucking beings. And because of that, we just use our ego to get what we want. We want to feel good all the time. We want to this and that and like the reason why people be like, "Oh, why does God allow negative things to happen?" is because they expect to feel good 24/7. That's not the point of life. The point of life is not to be happy. I feel like the point of life is to expand the consciousness, which is uncomfortable. It gets uncomfortable when you are trying to grow. So, on a small level, individual level, it is uncomfortable if you are overweight and you're trying to get in shape. It is uncomfortable if you are mentally fucked up and you're trying to become mentally healed. It is uncomfortable. The process of that is complicated, it's hard, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of self awareness in looking at the self. So, if we really want to know why does God allow negative things to happen, it's because God gave us the free will to be like unconscious. We have the choice to be egotistical, like, and I'm not talking about egotistical in the same sense that most people think. I'm talking about spiritual ego. We have this spiritual ego. We have this ego that then thinks it deserves to feel good all the time. I deserve to be rich. Oh, they're sitting on oil. We want that oil, so we're gonna kill them and take their oil. Oh, if they have a different idea than me, oh, I'm gonna kill them until my idea is the only one left. Like that's the human ego that is causing the problems. If human beings as a whole just got their ego under control, we wouldn't have as many of these problems. We have these problems because we're not facing our problems. We are blaming God for our problems. We're blaming God for not fixing our problems. But if some giant God entity had the ability to drop down and help the human species, what would that teach us? That's what I'm like when I hear this shit. When people are like, oh, why does God allow negative things to happen? I think to myself, what do you want God to do? Take all the negativity away? Human beings are not prepared for a world with no negativity. They would just create more negativity because they didn't learn how to stop being ego. So if God came down to remove all the problems of the world, I'd give us a year, 1 year, and we will have more problems than we did before God removed the problems. And then what? Are we going to expect God to do that again and again and again and keep intervening with us to take our problems away? But if we don't learn how to stop creating the problems, then we're just going to create new problems every time God takes the problems away. The problem is not God or whether God wants to take the problems away or not. It's whether we want to take the problems away or not. It's whether we want to become a conscious species or not. This is the thing, that you have the choice to be conscious or not. You have the choice to try to heal or to not. You have the choice to try to get in shape or not. We have these choices, and we are choosing certain choices that are causing certain reactions in the world. So, like, it's not. that why does God allow negative things? It's that I feel like we're missing the point of what the fuck are we even doing here. That, like, if you are looking out in the world saying, why is there negative things there? Well, why are you not looking at yourself? Are there negative things here? Fuck what is going on in the world. Yes, there's war, there's problems, there's a lot of bullshit, there's a lot of things. Like, but that doesn't matter. Because you can't do shit about any of that until you fix the problems within yourself. That's why it's like if you want to change the world, you change yourself. Because you can change the world one person at a time. And we're not in a rush. I think humans that are alive are in a rush because we know that we're going to die. We only get like 100 years max on this planet. So we're trying to rush shit to get shit done within this 100 years because we're like, oh, but there's so many problems and there's so many this and there's so much that. But like, if we just shut the fuck up about the problems and work on our own problems, we will slowly fix the world. We will slowly begin to take the problems out of the world because they're not problems, they're obstacles that are designed to teach us some lessons. Because I'm telling, if some God entity came in to help us, what lessons did we learn from that? We didn't learn a damn thing besides we need to rely on our sky daddy to help us with our problems. Like, it's like the human species hasn't grown up as a whole. We're still expecting some father entity being to come down and help us. But we need to help ourselves. So if we don't begin to start becoming more of a conscious species, we're just going to stay an ego species. Because that's what it is. We have this free will, this choice to move here or move there, to use our soul, our consciousness to make decisions, to use our love to make decisions, or use our ego to make decisions, our fear-based thing to make decisions. Where we look at people like they're different just because they have different skin tones. We look at people, oh, you live on this thing and you have a different belief than me, and fuck you because my belief is true and you're wrong. And like, all of this has to do with the fact that most people are controlled by their ego. And if we could get like 51% of the human species to be controlled by their soul and consciousness instead of their ego, the problems would fix like that, like in a snap. But this is why it's very complicated and why people are just waiting for some entity, God, Jesus, Buddha. They're waiting for somebody to be like, oh, I'll fix the problem for you. We can't. You have to do it. Because we already have religion. We already have all these spiritual people that like did their own work and did their own thing. But people, instead of people being inspired by Jesus, they pray to Jesus. And I mean no disrespect, but I'm just saying, instead of people will pray to Buddha or like look up to Buddha, but they're nothing like Buddha. People will pray to Jesus, but they're nothing like Jesus. This is what I mean. I'm pretty sure Jesus, Buddha, and all these people don't really care whether you pray to them or not. They want you to work on yourself just like they did. Like, Buddha did his thing and meditated next to a tree. I said this in a video a while ago. That, like, you could be some rich guy and you could give up your riches for 1 month. You can go meditate next to a tree for 1 month. If you're that inspired by Buddha, go do something similar that he did. But people don't. They would rather be an egotistical person saying, oh, Buddha was so enlightened. Jesus was so enlightened. They look at these people like, oh, they're so enlightened. Why does God allow negative things in the world? Well, because most of us are not enlightened. And if the more people that become enlightened, the less problems we'll have in the world. I know enlightened is a heavy term, but what I mean is becoming more conscious, becoming more self-aware. If I went in the streets and asked 10 random people, do you know yourself? Do you know how to heal yourself? Do you know what problems you have? Do you understand why you feel the way you feel? Most people have no idea why they feel the way they feel because they have not spent enough time to actually think about it. How many hours a day do you think about why you feel the way you feel? Instead of thinking why you feel the way you feel, people will think they want to feel good. So then when they feel bad, they're like, oh, why does God allow bad and negative things to happen in the world? God has nothing to do with that. That's your fault. That's your life is on you. And the whole planet is on us, the human species. It's not God's fault. It's our fault. And what the fuck are we going to do about it? Like, if we're just going to sit here and do nothing and just stay ego, stay fucking making decisions based off of fear, and then what are we going to, then we pray at night, praying to God for God to help remove the problems in the world, but we're not doing a damn thing to remove the problems in the world ourselves. That's why there's problems in the world. Because what are we doing about it? And we think we can do nothing. That's why nothing's happening. But if whatever you think is reality. So if you think you cannot fix your problems, then you actually cannot. If I think I can, then I actually can. Because thoughts create reality. But on a whole spectrum, like on a whole thing, billions of human beings, their thoughts collectively create the thing that we're in right now. So there's enough people where they believe in war and this and that, and there's all these we're just unconscious. And I'm just saying it's okay. It is okay that we're unconscious, because that's the point. Like, that's fine. What else would we be doing? If we were already some conscious, enlightened beings, we would have nothing to work towards. We would have nothing to go for. But because we know we're going to die in 100 years, we're like trying to rush. And instead of rushing the world, instead of looking at the world, I understand there's so many problems in the world. We individually need to look at ourselves. The world is not your problem. The world is not your responsibility. You are your own responsibility. Like, so unless you are mentally healed, physically healed, spiritually healed, emotionally healed, connected with your loved one, like, there's so much work you could do on your own that could begin to help the world. Unless you are rich, you shouldn't be there shouldn't even be on your mind that there's starving people in the world. I get it. I grew up poor. I get it. But why does that matter? Like, there's Americans that will sit there and be like, oh, there's starving kids in Africa. Bro, there's starving kids here in America. I grew up poor. But people are looking outside and they're not looking at themselves. You have Americans looking at Africa and other places, but Americans are not looking at America and seeing what the fuck the problem is with America. You have, like, this, we're all looking out instead of looking within. And if we start looking within, then we can change the world. That is so real. So why is there negative problems in the world? Because the human species is controlled by their ego instead of controlled by their soul and consciousness. How do we fix that? We begin to work on our consciousness individually. I worked on my soul, on my consciousness, on my own self, and now I can talk about it. Now I can explain, oh, I used to have depression and anxiety. I used to self-harm and cut myself. I used to whatever. And then people can ask me, well, how did you begin to fix that problem? And I can tell them. It's the same thing rich people do. Like, if somebody gets rich, all they want to do is tell people about how to get rich. Oh, this is how you make money. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. So why is there more problems? Why is there so many problems? Because you have more people that know how to get rich than you do that know how to heal. There's more people that know how to get rich than people that know how to heal themselves. So this is a problem of the human species. And it's fine. Because it's technically not a problem. It's just what is. Like, what is we are like a baby consciousness that has the chance to grow up. And it takes 10,000, 20,000, maybe 50,000 years for the human species to become the consciously enlightened beings that we're meant to be. But it's a long journey from monkeys to conscious monkeys. Right now, we're in the middle of, like, we're still monkeys, but we're slightly conscious. Slightly. We have a slight bit of self-awareness. We have a little sliver of understanding. But in order for us to get to that little sliver to a giant piece of understanding, we need to begin to understand ourselves individually. And this is work. It takes time. It's not easy. It was not supposed to be easy. People think the point of life is to be happy, but that is why we're so fucking miserable. Because if you are trying to be happy, then you're probably not actually happy. And if you're trying to be happy, we never ask ourselves if we deserve to be happy. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way or like in a negative way, but what I mean is we don't question ourselves of why we feel the way we feel. If somebody breaks up with us, we try to blame them, but there's a reason they left. And if you want to face that reason, it'll make you a better version of you. Like, there's a reason why you don't feel happy. If you are honest with yourself, you could look at it and begin to fix that problem to eventually get happy. But instead, we're unhappy and then we're praying to God to please make us happy. But God's probably up there like, the only way you're going to be happy is if I throw you in this problem here and you get out of the problem. If you are unconscious and you begin to become conscious, you'll feel better about yourself. If you're out of shape and you begin to get in shape, you will feel better about yourself. I don't mean anything disrespectful when I say, people are like, they're unhappy. And I'd be thinking, well, do we deserve to be happy? Because when I was unhappy, I didn't deserve to be happy. What I mean is, and people are going to get their panties all up in a bunch because they're like, well, everyone deserves to be happy. Okay? Yeah, we have, no, everyone has the ability to be happy. What are they doing to actually be happy or be at peace? The most amazing thing you could do for yourself is you become yourself. Are you the person the world wanted you to be, or are you the person you want to be? Like, better yet, are you the person God wants you to be? That's what I mean. It's like we have our ego that wants us to be rich and this and that, but I'm pretty sure God had a different idea for you. It's not like when God was creating you, God was like, oh, I want this human to be rich as fuck, and that's it. Like, no. Do you feel good about yourself? I'm saying it's great to be rich. If you want to make money, do your fucking thing. But that's not the only thing in existence. And if we look at it like we're all searching for money and trying to get rich, and then we're miserable in the end, we miss the fucking point. Because the point was to help the human species evolve and like to become a more spiritually conscious species. But if our only goal is to be happy, rich, and comfortable, then of course we're going to end up getting more problems in the world. Like, this is just what is. We're on a planet where we have the ability to grow, but we have the ability to choose not to grow. And if you choose not to grow, if 10 more people choose not to grow, then 20 more people choose not to grow, then 10,000 people choose not to grow, then of course we're going to get more problems in the world. If 2 people choose to grow, then another 10 people choose to grow, and another 10,000 people choose to grow, we will begin to fix the problems in the world. It's about growing as a whole human species. That's the point. And the only way you can do that, though, is by working on yourself. So, why is there negative problems in the world? Because we're not working on ourselves. And we need to start working on ourselves. And there's supposed to be negative problems right now because we're not conscious. So, of course, there's going to be problems because of that. Just like individually, if you are unconscious of the way you think and why you think that way, if you're unconscious of your negative behaviors, if you're unconsciously trying to feel good all the time, if you're unconscious of your own behavior, of course you're going to have problems in your own life because you're unconscious of the problems you're creating. But if you become conscious, You can begin to become aware that, oh, I think this way, that's why I feel this way. I do these things, that's why I have these reactions happening in my life. I like it's being conscious sucks though. At first, it really sucks because when you first become conscious, you're not going to be the best version of you. So you're going to become conscious and aware that you are not who you thought you were. People think they're the person they want to be. But no, that's who you want to be. That's not who you are right now. So who are you right now? If you can look at that and look and face the fact that you are not as good as you can be. You are not putting the work in like you should. You are not, if you start looking at these things and instead of worrying about your fucking feelings, everyone wants to feel good, but no, I don't want to feel good. I want to feel real. I want to become conscious. And if I have issues, I shouldn't feel good about those issues. I should begin to think about why do not I not feel good, and then I can begin to solve those issues. So I don't think it's about some giant God entity taking our problems away. I think it's about us as a human species learning ourselves on how to take our problems away.